security forces in their resolve to address the extraordinary levels of criminal activity in St. Andrews South, in the St. Andrews South Police Division. This was achieved, and our consensus in moving forward will undoubtedly be most impactful on the residents in that division. Mr. Speaker, today, considering the gains and positive effects of these measures, approval is once again being sought for the extension of the state of public emergency for the tri-parish region of St. James, Westmoreland, and Hanover. If there is value in lessons learned and wisdom gained from experiences of the past, we must acknowledge that the premature discontinuation of strong actions, such as the state of public emergency, does not serve our citizens and our communities, and indeed our country well. Our efforts in protecting the future of this country are therefore far from routine. Instead, they reflect our resolve to remain persistent and true to the task of transforming this country to a society that is safe, secure, cohesive, and just. Mr. Speaker, acting on the advice of the security forces, I am now bringing the Emergency Powers Continuance Number 2 Resolution 2019 to this Honourable House to vote on having the state of public emergency in the geographical area comprising the parishes, or rather the police divisions, of St. James, Westmoreland, and Hanover in their entirety remain in force for a further 3 months, 90 days, following the expiration of the current period. Mr. Speaker, over the period 18th of January 2018 to the 31st of January 2019, a state of public emergency was declared for the parish of St. James. The impact of the measure was reflected in the murder figure for the parish, which was reduced from 341 in 2017 to 102 in 2018, a reduction of 70%. Mr. Speaker, this House was not able to bring consensus for us to continue this measure. The result of that was a resurgence of violent crime and gang activity in the parish. These factors contributed to the declaration of another state of public emergency on Tuesday, the 30th of April 2019. This state of public emergency applies collectively to the entire parish of St. James, but we have also extended it, as was discussed in this House and raised by members, to Westmoreland, which at that time was also exhibiting a very high murder rate. The strategic decision that we took, Mr. Speaker, was to include the 3 contiguous parishes, St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. Mr. Speaker, since the implementation of the state of public emergency over the period April 30th, 2019 to the 21st of July 2019, murders and shooting in the parish of St. James have reduced by 40% and 27% respectively when compared to the equivalent period, that is the 5th of February 2019 to the 28th of April 2019, prior to the declaration. Murders and shootings in the parish of Westmoreland, and you will recall, Mr. Speaker, that members on both sides of the aisle raised significant concerns about what was happening in Westmoreland. And I'm pleased to report here, Mr. Speaker, that murders in Westmoreland have reduced by 74% and shootings by 70% when compared to the equivalent period prior to the declaration. Murders and shooting in Hanover have also reduced. 33% reduction in murders an 80% reduction in shootings when compared to the equivalent period prior to the declaration. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding these gains, the tri-parish region continues to raise significant security concerns nationally. Despite the reduction in murders and shootings which have been achieved since the start of the state of public emergency, the aggregate number of murders, 149 within the specified area, has remained relatively high. Cumulatively, the three parishes have accounted for 20% of the murders committed throughout the country over the period 1st of January 2019 to present. The high figures with respect to murders in relation to population trend in relation to population follow a trend. In St. James in 2017, that parish recorded the highest number of murders in relation to population. And just in case members would have forgotten, that parish had a 183 per 100,000 murder rate. It's a significantly high murder rate. And Westmoreland had a murder rate of 101 per 100,000, and Hanover was 87 per 100,000. The following year, Westmoreland recorded the highest number of murders in relation to population, with 97 per 100,000 persons, while Hanover and St. James were ranked second and fourth with 84, and Hanover having 84 per 100,000, and St. James at 55 per 100,000. Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the SOE worked before in 2018, and it is working now in its first implementation in 2019. But at the current state, in its current form, the murder rate for St. James is now 42 per 100,000. For Westmoreland, it is 36 per 100,000, and for Hanover, it's 29 per 100,000. If it continues at this rate, then you will end the year with St. James having a murder rate of 75 per 100,000, Westmoreland 65 per 100,000, and Hanover 51 per 100,000. All of these are still very high murder rates. And so, Mr. Speaker, examining the statistics, it has led us to come to Parliament to ask for the support of the Parliament to continue the efforts to reduce murders in that parish, in those three parishes. Mr. Speaker, I want to, in closing my presentation, having regard to the agenda of Parliament and the time that we are presently, to say that on Thursday last, we met with the National Partnership Council. And we raised with them, Mr. Speaker, the prospect of establishing a monitoring and oversight body for crime-fighting strategy in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, this oversight body has worked very well in managing, for example, our economic programs, EPOC being a part of the National Partnership Program. It has worked very well in managing environmental issues. Working through the National Partnership Council, we were able to come to the understanding as to what should be the definition of the cockpit country. And there have been many other national issues. for which the partnership model has worked. It has worked very well in dealing with industrial relations harmony, in dealing with wage negotiations. And it is a mechanism that has been used by all administrations since 2007. It has been used by the Bruce Golding administration. It has been used by the Portia Simpson administration. And it is now being used by my administration. It is a nationally agreed strategy for social consensus around critical national issues. Mr. Speaker, we take note of the laudable effort of the opposition to have a crime summit. We are not opposed to that. And we believe that everyone in the country should be talking about how we can come to some solution with crime. So I don't want it to be ever felt that the opposition is doing something that the government does not agree with or frowns on. That is absolutely not the case. It is a laudable effort, and we encourage the opposition, we encourage the churches to, yes, let us talk about it. The leader of the opposition has extended an invitation, and I'm certain that we will find an appropriate level of representative to attend. Mr. Speaker, you're especially inviting me. I will ensure that there is a very high level representation there. And Mr. Speaker, it could be in fact very useful to monitor all that is being said, but we would also want it to be understood that from the perspective of being the government, we cannot go outside of what has been established, tried, tested, and proven. We don't want to destroy that. So yes, we will participate in other collaborative efforts, but we would ask that once we go now to take action, if it is that we distill suggestions from the crime summit led by the opposition, suggestions made from civil society generally, that there is this formal mechanism which the opposition sits on. And when we were in the opposition, we sat on it as well. And as I've said, it has been a very effective tool that we must not destroy. So we have no challenge with collaboration, but what we will do is take all the suggestions, all the recommendations, and once there is a plan of action, then we will ask the National Partnership Council to be the monitoring body for it. Now remember, this was the strategy employed when we were executing the national fiscal effort about managing our fiscal affairs. Out of the Partnership Council, we had EPOC attached to that. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, members, I believe that for there to be continuity in the national crime fighting strategies, because I do pay careful attention to what is being said in the media, and the request for a crime plan. And regardless of whatever is presented, there is still a call for a crime plan. Mr. Speaker, it is amazing because when there was a plan, a good question, when there supposedly was a plan, we still observed the persistent rise in crime and the murder rates. Mr. Speaker, we have put in place a plan. We have put in place Plan Secure Jamaica, which is the most comprehensive plan for Jamaica's national security ever put forward. that despite the distraction and the political machinations, that is, Mr. Speaker, not just a plan on paper, but it is a plan that is being executed every single day. And more than that, it is a plan that is being financed by the highest level of expenditure on national security ever in this country from its independence. Mr. Speaker, it is the first time that any government has ever taken such a comprehensive view on national security, dealing with border security, dealing with protection of our infrastructure, dealing with the protection of our financial system, dealing with crime and violence, dealing with improving our police force, dealing with improving our military, dealing with increasing the intake in the military and the police. There has never been, Mr. Speaker, there has never been a plan that has been so comprehensive. But we see the effect of it, Mr. Speaker. We see the effect in the reduction in the murder rate. Mr. Speaker, I'm in a difficult position because I'm being asked to collaborate. I'm being asked to sit down in council. But at the same time, the people who are asking me to sit down and collaborate and sit in council with them are also making unfair criticisms of the government. But that's fine because that's politics. But what is disturbing is when the criticisms are not based on any fact, are untrue, and only designed for political gain. So, Mr. Speaker, we on this side, not picking over anything, we have to put the record clear. Because if it is that you come to the table for consultation, there must be truthfulness, there must be openness, because it's reciprocal. In other words, you want me to listen to you, but you also have to listen to me. You want me to acknowledge your facts, but you have to acknowledge my facts as well. So collaboration and cooperation requires that there be a willingness to accept the truth. So, Mr. Speaker, I am prepared, as always, to collaborate. As always, to act in council. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, once we go down that road, we must know that when the facts are presented, that there is no attempt to obfuscate, no attempt to mislead. Because at the end of the day, the murder rate is the murder rate. It represents the loss of lives in our country. And if there are measures that are preserving life, why should we defer on those measures? If there are measures that are increasing the security of the country, why should there be a difference? Mr. Speaker, every consideration raised by the opposition as it relates to how we use the measures and the tools, we have taken them into account. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the measures that we have employed, the measures that we have used, I understand, the measures that we have used are not perfect. They are not perfect. The member from Westmoreland Western will agree they are not perfect. And they are not without risks. But we went through a process of ensuring that our security forces understood that the use of these emergency powers, these enhanced powers, must be done with respect for the citizens. The opposition raised issues about detention conditions. And we didn't need the opposition to raise them for us to fix them. But having raised them, we went back to the drawing board, Mr. Speaker. We heard from the public defender raising issues about conditions of detention. I went personally went into the cells, looked at where the men bathed, the conditions under which they were held. And Mr. Speaker, we came back, sat down with the police, Ministry of National Security, and we are paying very close attention to them. Like you, we don't want our state to be considered one that is being militarized, as I gather was the concern expressed in the printed media by my friend from Central Kingston. This is not something that I like to hear. I'm very sensitive to that, because that is not Jamaica's image. But I believe it is not beyond us to acknowledge the nature of the problem we have. And as the opposition is grappling with it, we are grappling with it. If it means that we have to build public consensus on what to do in this way, you have your meetings, I attend, I have my meetings, you attend. It is important that the criminals never feel that there is a difference between the government and the opposition as it relates to fighting crime. Because that difference only gives them a space in which to grow. And I'm hoping that more and more, because they do watch our debates, they do interpret our statements, and they watch our body language, and it helps them in terms of making their own criminal decisions. Well, today, you will not get a cussing from me. So, Mr. Speaker, I think in the spirit of a better understanding, I think in the spirit of protecting our nation and preserving life, I recommend this to the House for its support.
Dr. Phipps. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that the